How the devil are we? I'm Matt, and it's been a while since we've done one of these. Ross Coulthart, News Nation, reality check, questions being asked around the UAP UFO topic. Ross Coulthart sometimes throwing out some pretty outlandish claims. Tic Tacs are built by Lockheed Martin. That was one of his, but not all Tic Tacs. I couldn't quite make out what he was trying to say with that one. Let's have a look at the latest Q&As.
Well, g'day and welcome to Reality Check Q&A. As the
G'day, Ross.
world teeters on the edge of what seems like inevitable conflict. God, I hope Iran works itself out. We are, of course, continuing to probe into the questions that you keep asking. And here to help me through it, Megan Middick.
Hi, Ross. How are you?
I'm very well. I had an exchange of messages earlier on today with a person I know in Iran. And I have to say, the situation there sounds horrific. I really hope and pray that those brave people taking on the theocratic fascist mullahs are able to achieve what they want to achieve.
Yep, I agree. The videos out of there are so hard to watch, and definitely praying for that situation.
Oh, it's horrific. Absolutely horrific.
I thought you said terrific then. It is. It is. It absolutely is. Me personally, I think the general population are showing exactly what they think. I think it's no coincidence that Trump went out there and got a dictator out of Venezuela in one night, and then all of a sudden the people thought this is the art of the possible. And I just hope that they succeed. But I do think it's going to take outside intervention to help as well.
Anyway, fire on.
All right, you got it, Ross. We will start with an email from Jerry. This is about Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War. Hi, Ross. First time asking a question. Normally I just listen, but I couldn't help asking after hearing Pete's comments. It sounded to me like he's including the legacy programs in his new organizational efforts. Your opinion, please, if you watched. I always appreciate your messages. Jerry.
G'day, Jerry. Yes, I did watch. I watched Pete Hegseth very, very closely indeed, because as we know, the Department of Defense is one of the nexus points where things interesting UAP related are converging. And look, I don't think he said anything overtly about UAPs. I think you're talking about an address particularly that he gave earlier this month with Elon Musk at an Elon Musk SpaceX facility. And I did actually keep a note of it because I thought it was fascinating. He declared he was going to dismantle peacetime complacency. He declared the old system dead and mandated tech supremacy in areas like AI, autonomous systems, hypersonics, quantum, directed energy, space dominance, and biotechnology. He's consolidated the Defense Department's system.
I mean, none of that is outlandish futuristic technology. I think we have every single one of those basically at our fingertips right now.
All under one chief technology officer, a guy called Emil Michael. And he's mandated an AI first force. It's interesting.
AI has become this big, massive misnomer that if you slap an AI on everything, then it's got artificial intelligence and it's, everything's AI. Toasters are AI. An AI kettle. Bloody AI things that you can wear, which is just a speaker that goes to ChatGPT, which is a large language model. So, I don't know. Is a bubble going to burst with AI? Let me know.
Because whilst he's not saying anything specific about the UAP issue, I assume Pete Hegseth has been briefed in, if not also the president. Well, I know the president has been. Previously, Hegseth's been very guarded on UAPs. He gave a press conference in May last year, and he was asked about aliens in Area 51, and as usual, there was the kind of nervous giggles and titter from the very juvenile members of the press gallery.
And the answer is like, I can't tell you about that. Like Obama did.
He responded saying, quote, "I have no evidence of any life beyond this planet or any additional moons or planets that might be out there. Give me a little time. I'll let you know what I found out."
So a clever answer. I don't know of any life beyond this planet. That's because anything that we've identified in terms of non-human intelligence has been on this planet. So that's not to say it's not. There's no evidence of NHI. It's just the only evidence we've got is on this planet.
And frankly, it's a reflection of the press gallery's, how does one say this, lassitude and disinterest, that nobody's asked him a follow-up question since. Maybe they've all been kicked out of the building because most of the mainstream legacy media are no longer working in the Pentagon building. But I do think, Jerry, you can draw conclusions from Pete Hegseth's announcement about particularly his emphasis on wartime urgency. It kind of aligns with the need for, if you like, no ideological filters, transparency. Maybe somewhere deep in the dark recesses of Pete Hegseth's brain, he has a strategy. I hope so, but my worry is, and certainly the message that I'm getting from most of my sources is, irrespective of the messaging that we're getting from Pete Hegseth, I'm being told a very clear decision has been made to put the UAP issue onto the back burner for now. There's
Wonder why the world's eating itself. I wonder why.
not going to be any government executive disclosure. There's not going to be any movement from Congress.
A lot of background noise, apologies.
The key members of the UAP caucus in Congress are being effectively nobbled. I just don't think we're going to see any kind of meaningful government disclosure anytime soon. And I don't think that's because Trump is not disposed to be open with the American public. I actually think he is. And I do think the sentiment that I'm getting from key people in his administration is that they are wide open to discussing the UAP issue. But
I mean, do you think the world is open for the government to say NHI exists and it's here, when you look at everything that's going on within the US itself? You've got left eating the right eating the left. You've got Europe, which just seems to be imploding on itself, trying to import people who just does not like the way of life in the West and is trying to change it from within. And the Western political leaders decided, yeah, this is the way to go at the expense of its general population. And you've got conflict in Ukraine, Russia. You've got China that could potentially have conflict with Taiwan if it had its way. Venezuela, obviously, a dictator has been removed there. Greenland, is that going to be, the next part of conflict? Just, I think we could do with NHI being revealed. Maybe it will, I don't know, solidify the world as we are the human race and there is another intelligence out there. Whereas at the moment, it's just tribalism.
At the right time. I'm also aware, and I want to flag this to people in the Pentagon who are watching, I'm very aware that a decision has been made to keep the location of a certain installation where non-human technology is being stored secret for now, and that there has been internal debate about whether or not there be disclosure of a hitherto undisclosed facility that was being kept illegally from the knowledge of Congress and oversight of the various congressional committees. I'm told what's been happening behind the scenes is that there has been retroactive, more recent attempts to brief up certain key tame members of the Gang of Eight. And it's sad, but I guess if we are moving into a wartime footing at the moment, and God forbid it does look like that's happening. I mean, Trump's making bellicose noises at the time of this recording with Iran. I wouldn't be surprised if by the time this show goes to air, there is conflict in Iran involving American intervention. And of course, there's the ongoing dreadful debacle of Ukraine.
And Greenland.
I do think, Jerry, there are changes afoot in the Defence Department where Pete Hegseth has indicated a willingness to rattle the cage. And I do think one of the most interesting things is he intends to break up the previous quite monopolistic control that was held by past administrations over the appointment of key committee members. And it does mean, I think, that what we're going to see is a new round of blood in the Defence Department of people who may be more disposed to being more open. Because frankly, I'm being told there is no good reason why there should not be a disclosure. And on that note, let's move on, Megan.
That was one question. This is Ross Coulthart. He could spend 10 minutes answering one question. I wonder if there's going to be a question around Steven Spielberg and Disclosure Day, unless he's already had it in a previous episode. Don't know.
All right, you got it. We will go to Colts Are Blue on X. Does Ross have anything to add regarding UAP GERB's claim on the location of the biologics? Are there any sources that can confirm?
Well, what you're referring to there is the great work of my dear friend and colleague UAP Gerb, who's a YouTuber and researcher who focuses very much on UAPs and has spent a great deal of time in recent times investigating the purported location of stored non-human technology and the likely location of alleged biologics. And one of the places that he highlights is the Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah, which he says in a recent broadcast on his YouTube channel is a very significant site, potentially involving the study or exploration of biologics. And look, as best I know from my sources, some of whom purport to be first-hand people with knowledge of the legacy program, yes, Dugway is one of those sites. But interestingly enough, I'm not being told it's the key site. The key site is the underground facility I was just referring to, which is still being kept secret.
I wonder where this underground facility is. I wonder if it's continental United States. Would make sense. Denver Airport, maybe.
I'm basically being told that there has been a decision made at the top of the administration, probably at the level of the National Security Council and the White House, to keep the UAP issue quiet for now while they deal with the other things on their plate. I am being reassured that there is an intention to be open with the American public. That won't involve disclosure of technologies that we've been able to acquire, but it may involve an admission of a non-human intelligence. There's a debate going on about that at the moment. Now, UAP Gerb really does know his homework, and he's, I know, got very, very good sources. We've had him on the show before. So one of the places that he's named, of course, is the Dugway Proving Ground, but that's only one of the locations he cites. He also
I'm going to have to check out UAP Gerb. I must admit, I haven't heard his name before.
Also talks about, in previous historical shows that he's done, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and he obviously cites the speculation about how a lot of the Roswell material was taken to Wright-Pat. He's also examined in past shows Area 51 and S4 near Papoose Mountain in the Nevada Test Range, and obviously it's been referenced in work that UAP Gerb's done in the past as a site for operations involving craft and biologics. And certainly the interviews that he did with, I've forgotten his name, Jonathan Weigand, who was the guy who witnessed an alleged UFO that had crashed into a mountain in Peru and witnessed its attempted retrieval by people who were clearly from the Department of Energy. The suggestion is that whatever was taken from that craft, be it biologics, and there were beings allegedly seen there, were taken to the Area 51 Papoose Mountain base.
Dugway Proving Ground. I mean, has anyone ever... I don't know, but does anyone know if Jake Barber ever referenced where the range was? So he said he used to do retrievals, including the egg, the video that we all saw and wasn't blown away by. That he said wasn't his, but it was a related video. And he mentioned the range where they would obviously retrieve these craft and then take the crafts to be picked up. Has he ever mentioned where that was? I've not, obviously, I know he's doing Skywatcher stuff. I think they're releasing a film, making money out of it. All the same racket. I wonder if he's ever mentioned where the range is. Maybe he will, if you hire the video.
There is also, and people need to be aware of this, I'm giving more credence the more I get into this subject, as incredible as it may sound. I do think that there is evidence that there is connective tunnels between a lot of these bases. Incredible as it may sound, because these tunnels would have to be many hundreds of miles, if not thousands of miles long. It seems preposterous that something like that could be constructed under the noses of the American people, but apparently that has been happening. So UAP Gerb in February last year did a really key interview with my friend and colleague Jesse Michaels, and he described himself as being in touch with first-hand witnesses from military intelligence and private aerospace who have seen craft and biologics. And it may very well be we're talking to some of the same people. This is why I really do think the Trump administration needs to bite the bullet and avoid catastrophic, messy disclosure by taking control of the idiots that are in charge of the program at the moment and assuming some responsibility and authority over them, because they are trying to use the usual tactics of intimidation and bullying to shut people up. And guys, it's not working.
I mean, if all the allegations are true, then they've actually killed people in the past. So I can understand why they'd want to keep it a secret, because there's probably, criminal charges being brought up.
I think UAP Gerb's on the money. And I know from my own sources that the sites that he's cited, I'm sure he knows about others. There's another one that both he and I have discussed in the past. I'll let people be the judge of that. But my understanding is that there is a UAP biologics centre on the east coast of the United States. How does one say this? Very close to Washington, D.C. Megan.
All right, here we go. Stephen Greenstreet on X. Has Ross successfully summoned any alien spirits with his psychic powers yet? Please ask.
Okay, so the Stephen Greenstreet, this is not a non-partisan player. Stephen is a New York Post video editor who purports to be a journalist, who has done his level best to snidely and maliciously attack anyone who is a whistleblower. Frankly, my position with him, I've largely ignored him for the last few years, but he's somebody who I think people need to be extremely wary of. And once I've acknowledged his existence here, I won't be acknowledging his existence again.
Ross must have had prior knowledge of these questions, because I can't imagine that she would have thrown that out there. I think Ross has probably gone, you know what? I'm going to answer this. He's being a dick, and I'm going to answer it. And yeah, I don't think Stephen Greenstreet is 100% impartial at all.
The interesting thing is that he makes a complete straw man point here. He's asserting or implying that I've said that I can summon aliens with my psychical powers, which of course is a flippant, pejorative and completely misleading comment, which is not based on any factual reality at all. I have never asserted that I have psychical powers, and it's a classic illustration of the kind of straw man argumentation that idiots like Stephen Greenstreet are capable of. He's how does one say this? A person who seems to derive a lot of his own meaning from pulling down and attacking people who are very, very courageously making an effort to expose what they know is going on inside an unreported, probably illegally operating covert program inside the National Security Administration. And frankly, his flippancy diminishes and demeans the New York Post.
I think News Nation, I reacted to a video on this. So News Nation did a piece to say that algorithms and social media rewards the worst of us. So if you say something and you don't even believe it to be true, but you say it knowing that 100 or even 1,000 people are going to comment on it and say, you're wrong, blah, 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 you're being a dickhead, you're being an arsehole, whatever it is, right? Pardon the French, it'll reward you for it because you know that people react to it. And people, whether it's in the UAP industry or not, or, journalism, they'll do the exact same thing. They'll say something controversial to get a reaction because it sells clicks and it sells have revenue and all the rest of it. It's just like, be open and honest. Say what you believe. If you don't believe it, don't bother saying it.
I was more happy to see one of his colleagues, my Australian friend Miranda Devine.
I know. And I think I've just seen an update from, I think Casper Sykes just released a video. RIP, his brother. So, thoughts go out to Casper Sykes there. Give him some love.
Asking Trump a good, honest question about UAPs. And did you notice Trump gave a good, solid, honest answer? He didn't treat it with flippancy, and he didn't treat it with the derision and malicious unkindness that Stephen Greenstreet treats every potential whistleblower and witness. He's a person best ignored and forgotten and consigned to the rubbish bin of history.
Come on, Ross, what do you really think?
Okay, here we go. Over to Jeffrey Cox on email. Hi, Ross. Have you heard about British filmmaker Mark Christopher Lee's alleged access to Vatican archives and his plan to produce a documentary regarding the Vatican's plan for addressing the church's position regarding first contact? Keep up the good work.
Okay, so I actually looked this up earlier this year because I saw a post, I think it might have been from Mark, who I've been in contact with previously, where he asserted on Twitter that he'd been granted rare access to the Vatican's secretive or secret archives. And the interesting thing is I've heard no such acknowledgement from the Vatican, which of course they're very unlikely to do. I am aware of other reputable academic researchers who have been given access to the Vatican archives in the past, notably Professor Diana Walsh-Pasolka. And I guess I would be really surprised if Mark has secured this access. I'd be very happy for him if that's the case, because I'm in no doubt at all that the Vatican is a repository of some quite extraordinary documents that go back over 1,000 years, recording anomalous phenomena.
See, that should be a problem for everyone, right? Whether you're Catholic, Christian, whatever, right? Okay, if your main religious leader is a pope, and you know that they have access to documentation that is truthful documents and historical documents, right, going back 1,000 years, but they do not want that out in public and they're keeping it secret and away from everybody's eyes, that for me is not something that I would like to forgive, because it's almost like burying the truth, and it's almost like if the Nazis would have won, they would have burnt certain books and gone, you know what, we're not having that anymore, we're rewriting history and we're getting rid of it. I'm not comparing the Vatican to the Nazis, but when you are burying historical documents because they might have unpalatable truths about religion or history, then unfortunately you become almost like this whitewashing dictatorship that says we are not actually releasing this truth, we're going to keep it there and we're going to restrict any access and nobody's allowed to see it. Historical documents that probably didn't belong to the church to begin with.
It's interesting because a lot of the things that are in religious literature that record angels, beings, when you actually look at the reports, I was told by people who've seen some of these archives, they're often orbs of light. There's another one as well, which I found particularly interesting, that Diana Walsh-Pasolka has talked about in one of her books, where a nun who was living in Italy, of course, in some way was seen, how does one say that, seen by people in Latin America. How that could be the case, or in Central and South America, how that could be the case, I don't know. But basically, she was, when the Spaniards arrived, when the Spanish conquistadors arrived in Central and South America, this Roman Italian nun was already allegedly well known and part of the mythology of people in that area. And the allegation is that she somehow translocated. So, yes, the Vatican is an area of mystery. Mark makes some pretty wild claims. He suggests the Vatican has given him access, and that it may be that under this new Pope Leo 14, they may be preparing for first contact as a major UFO UAP disclosure event this year.
I saw something. Sorry, but it just reminded me. I saw something about the Bank of England, and I can't remember it. It wasn't on Reddit. I think it was X. And apparently, the Bank of England have been asked to prepare for contingencies in the event that NHI was revealed to the general public, or the existence of aliens. It's kind of, the run on the banks, society breaking down kind of thing. It's like preparing what would you be doing this event, and I don't know how much of that's true. I just saw an headline, and it just reminded me of it. I didn't bother looking into it.
I see and hear no evidence of that, and I sincerely hope Mark's right. Mark has previously pushed for the Holy See to declassify hundreds of thousands of declassified documents on potential UFO sightings. So maybe what this is his ambit claim. He's trying to give them a bit of a nudge by using some social media publicity. And he has also speculated, what I've speculated in the past, that a lot of biblical texts might describe what are misinterpreted alien encounters. And he also points to the fact that it's on the public record that the Vatican has allegedly collaborated in cover-ups, including the retrieval of the Magenta 1933 craft that crashed under the Mussolini regime and was allegedly passed over to the Americans on or around 1944. It should be emphasised these are Mark's self-reported claims promoted through his interviews, his film and media interviews, and as far as I can see, at the moment, there's no corroboration or confirmation from the Vatican. If it's true, by golly, I wish him the best of luck.
That would be.
I mean, how awesome would it be if the Pope came out and said, right, we're going to declassify all the Vatican documents, and we're going to keep it safe, and we're going to restrict access, but we're going to allow people in, and we're going to allow scanning of these documents. They're going to be housed and maintained within the Vatican. They're not going to leave, but they're going to be digitized, and the content is going to be put out there for people to study, for years to come. That would be magic. But yeah, it's so secretive. I can only imagine that the reason why they kept documents down there is because they may be harmful to the church itself.
Exciting to see. We have Dharma Lion on X. Hi, Ross. Happy New Year. Have you researched into Sergeant Carl Wolf, who claimed to have seen NASA images of structures on the moon, and Donna Hare, who reported NASA airbrushing UAPs out of photos? What are your thoughts?
I'm going to be bringing you a little bit more on this very soon on Reality Check. I'm doing some work on it at the moment. But what I can tell you is I find both Sergeant Carl Wolf, who sadly died in a very strange motorcycle accident, and Donna Hare, who I think is still alive, I find both of them very credible. Carl Wolf was a former US Air Force sergeant who went public saying that when he was working in the Air Force, he had a top secret crypto clearance, and I think he was asked to repair a bit of machinery in a room at NASA. And for some reason, while he was in that room, one of the technicians in the room said, "Have a look at this," and showed him what looked like artificial structures that the person was involved in airbrushing out on imagery from the moon. The moon.
Yeah, I remember his interview, and he was saying like there were dome structures, and there were like what was classical radar dishes on there, and he's like, "Are they ours?" kind of thing. And he was like, "Should I be seeing this?" And he was very. I don't think I should be actually witnessing any of this stuff.
Surface. He said that they were high-resolution photographic mosaics, I think, of the far side of the moon, and they showed multiple artificial structures. Now, this is an allegation that won't go away, and I do note that recent released video and high imagery photography from all sides of the moon shows no such artificial structures. But he pointed to tall, tower-like buildings, large spherical domed structures, objects resembling Quonset huts or some kind of shaped building, clustered formations. Now, what's interesting is I'm talking to other people who say, contrary to the officially released imagery, they've been able to see artificial objects and indeed movement of anomalous objects on the moon.
I don't know. I mean, India's got a space program. China's got a space program. European Space Agency, NASA, SpaceX. We've got people who can, was there a guy who even tried to send a probe to Mars and it crashed? But, he managed to get it there. You're telling me that all these nations have managed to send a craft to the dark side of the moon and not one of them has gone, hold on a minute, there's something very interesting down there. Not sure about that. Could have been a disinformation campaign. So you send a random guy into a room to repair a bit of equipment, and the guy just happened to be looking at photographs of the dark side of the moon, saying there's bases on there.
So hopefully we'll be bringing you more on this in a future reality check. Looking forward to it.
Some evidence of magic, Ross, if possible.
All right, here's an email from John in the UK. Hi, Ross and Megan. If humans and other life forms are being observed by NHI, do you think the NHI are using Earth as a laboratory, a farm, a zoo, or something else? Thanks for all you do for this topic. Cheers, John.
Wow. Okay, you're inviting me to speculate. Okay, so I'm speculating here. I find it very interesting that good people like Whitley Strieber and other people I speak to, multiple people, I'm talking to a quite probably, I don't know, over half a dozen women at the moment who say they believe that their eggs have been taken and that in some cases some have been told by purported non-human intelligences that they are being used by non-human intelligences to hybridize humans. It's one hell of an allegation, and frankly, other than the fact that there are, and I do believe this is the case, women who have suffered phantom pregnancies. They're pregnant one minute, their babies are gone the next, and it's quite clear from the medical examinations they were pregnant and there's no explanation for where their baby has gone. I do sadly think that there is some evidence that a non-human intelligence is tinkering with humans. And I think that might explain the abduction phenomenon, if the abduction phenomenon is real.
I know he's really on the fence when it comes to the abduction phenomenon, and for good reason, really, because I suppose sleep paralysis and mental health and things like that, you just don't know what is real. Me personally, I think there's something to it, but I can see why you're on the fence. I'm very much a nuts and bolts kind of guy, but the woo, as they call it now, is definitely creeping into the topic and probably going to be overtaking the nuts and bolts conversation in terms of NHI and UFOs.
I think also there's a human conceit here. We think we're the focus of the attention by the NHI. Maybe it's the planet they're worried about. Maybe they don't give a rat's ass about us humans. maybe we have a human Homo sapiens conceit. Maybe it's the beautiful planet they're wanting to preserve, not us humans, and they're really not that worried about us humans. All of this, of course, is totally speculative, but I think the evidence is beginning to be quite convincing, if not overwhelming, that there are non-human intelligences that have been taking a very close interest in human reproduction. Whitley Strieber, for example, says he believes his semen has been taken, and obviously he believes that there's some kind of breeding program underway. I mean, it sounds wacky, and it's so easy to laugh about and titter and ridicule, but I get literally thousands of messages from people who are pleading with me to take this issue seriously. And I can't discount the abduction phenomenon out of hand. It's either the largest mass psychosis in human history, or there are people suffering quite frightening events on occasion where they're purportedly taken.
It reminds me of that case where there were two fishermen, I think in the US, quite some time ago now, and they were purportedly abducted by what they called almost like robotic beings. Um, Took them into the craft. They were sort of subjected to some experiments, medical procedures. They were returned and they went to the police station. And obviously, the police were thinking, these guys are making a story up. So they left the tape recording going in the room to see if they could catch them out in a lie. And when they actually listened to it back, and I think you can hear a recording of this if you search for it somewhere, that they were saying, "I can't believe this happened to us," kind of thing. It weren't like, "Oh right, I think they believe us," like we're making all this shit up, and I think they're not buying it, or I think they're believing us. They actually carried on talking as in, "I can't believe this happened to us, and I can't believe what we went through," kind of thing. So it's almost like they doubled down on it. They didn't realize that they were still being recorded, which led quite a lot of credence to it.
And where it does appear the animals or the beings are taking an interest in their reproductive system, and it does appear that semen and eggs are being taken from men and women. What lies behind all of that? I don't know.
Okay, Russ, we were going to go
We do the same to animals.
to a post on X from Wonder Twin number 1. What was actually shot down over Alaska and Canada in 2023? 3 objects were said to have been downed, but none were ever shown or talked about again. UAP number 20 was the name given to one of them.
Okay, well, we do know that the Chinese balloon was a Chinese balloon, and there was pretty convincing evidence it was a Chinese balloon because we got, I think, video or imagery from a U2 that examined the object. I have done an...
There was a guy on the ground who filmed it being shot down as well. And that was obviously a balloon. But it's funny how they went, we've only just started shooting some balloons down. And they didn't say the others were Chinese spy balloons. They just said objects that could have posed a risk to commercial traffic because it was at like 30,000 feet. Are you telling me there's balloons and lanterns and all sorts not up there at any one given time? Or drones that could pose a risk? Yeah, they're not shooting objects down left, right, and centre, are they?
You can go back and have a look in the Reality Check archives. I've done a story in the past on my grave suspicions about the retrieval operation in Alaska.
Yeah, because there was a guy in Alaska, and they were saying that we can't retrieve it because of the weather, because the ice is frozen over, etc. And he was recording, and you could see military aircraft circling areas, and there was obviously retrieving something.
Where massive, truly massive amounts of money was spent on a retrieval of what the United States Air Force and certain figures in the administration have repeatedly attempted to suggest was just a balloon, some kind of weather or observation balloon. Now, I can imagine governments overreacting, and I do think that it's interesting to see the media reaction from February 2023 when there were these purportedly 4 overflights over the continental United States, over North America, by objects, one of which we now know to be a Chinese balloon because it was recovered in the ocean. But there were 3 other objects, and we've been quite open in our suspicions here at Reality Check that the object that was recovered, and it was recovered, I'm told, by military personnel that there was a recovery, and by golly, if this was an observation balloon or a weather balloon and they spent the resources that they spent on that recovery, it was the biggest waste of public money in human history because literally dozens of aircraft and on-the-ground personnel were involved in a retrieval operation that took weeks. And there are people up in Alaska who frankly had the bejabbers scared out of them from talking to us anymore, but who were posting imagery of the aircraft and personnel on the ground showing what was a massive retrieval operation. Now, what was it that was recovered in Alaska? We don't know. Moving on to Yukon.
It could have also been a cover. So if you can imagine that you've got a sub, a nuclear sub, and maybe it's yours, maybe it's another nation's, and that sub has got nukes on it and it's been sunk, or there's been an accident and you need to retrieve it. You don't want to let other nations know that there's a nukes down there on a sub. So you make out some story about we shot a weather balloon down, and yeah, we're just retrieving it so we can see whose it is. But you're actually out there trying to recover a sub with nukes on it. Just a theory. Maybe even a plane with nukes on it. Maybe an experimental aircraft. But you've made out like you've shot an object down. You've not really. It's one of yours.
Yes, there is a reference to UAP 20, which I think is interesting in itself. It's a document that was obtained under Canadian FOI. And frankly, it acknowledges that whatever the object was, it was an unidentified anomalous phenomena object, a UAP object, which may just be the categories that they use until they've been able to identify the object. But I thought that was very interesting. I am told that parts of the object were retrieved. And I've been told that by people from Canada, Canadian military. They've been told to shut up by the Americans.
Canadians should say, then, why are you telling us to shut up?
Now, look, it may be, we have a saying in my line of work, which is always assume a fuck up before a conspiracy. Maybe the Americans are just embarrassed because they spent multiple tens of millions of dollars on a retrieval operation that ended up recovering a very battered weather balloon that had been put up by a bunch of students. And maybe they were embarrassed that they spent, say, $500,000 on a missile fired from an F-22 fighter at high altitude. Maybe that's the explanation. But what I don't understand is, under the new administration, if they knew that the Biden administration had spent tens of millions of dollars on retrieving bits of old weather balloons, wouldn't they go public with it? Wouldn't they reveal it? This is the thing I don't understand, is why has the media so lamely and passively stopped asking questions about this? And I don't include...
I can understand why Republicans wouldn't, because you wouldn't blame the administration. It just highlights the ineptitude of your own military. Someone might say, shoot a balloon down. But then if the military can't identify a weather balloon, shoot it down and say, oh, by the way, it took us weeks to retrieve and cost tens of millions of dollars. That's an ineptitude of your military, regardless of who's in power, Republicans or Democrats. And if that's the case where they were shooting weather balloons down, why was it not done before? Why are they not doing it since?
Us at Reality Check here. We've been hammering the Defence Department about this for years now. It's been 2 years nearly since the February 2023 incident. 3 years nearly, sorry.
I think the release of that information that they were shooting these craft down was almost a test. Could we potentially come out and say we shot these down? Would it garner public attention? If yes, what is the public's reaction to it? And then will it just eventually go away? The answer is yes, the public was interested. And would the attention go away? The answer is very much yes.
And frankly, we don't know any answers. We don't know any answers about that or the next incident, which was the Lake Huron incident. And the Lake Huron incident is one that I do suspect was possibly just an observation balloon, because the military, I think there was a released report which acknowledged that they could see strings hanging down from the object, which is consistent with something being held in a balloon and some kind of weather systems gondola being held underneath it. But yes, there were, I think, anomalous objects shot down by F-22 fighters over both Alaska and the Yukon in 2023, and we've never received an answer about what they were. And frankly, tens of millions of dollars of public money in the United States has been spent on these retrieval operations. I don't understand, I really truly don't understand why people who call themselves journalists in the American legacy media don't continue to push and ask questions. And isn't it interesting? I mean, I'm just emphasizing the contrast here.
The public are fickle beasts. They'll move on to the next thing. That'll become something big. They'll move on to the next thing. Right now, it's the Minnesota fraud scandal. That'll be massive for the next month because it's not just Minnesota, it'll be everywhere in the US, and it's probably global as well, all this fraud going on. People in political positions enabling it and probably profiting from it. But then it'll be something else in a month, 2 months' time. Always will be.
Behind the hysteria that took place in that February 2023 event when all of these objects were flying over the States. And it got momentum because in Congress, certain Republican leaders saw a political opportunity to embarrass the administration over the national security implications of unhindered overflights by potentially Chinese surveillance balloons. And they made merry with it, and it became a huge media issue. But witness the contrast between that and what's continuing to be going on with these unidentified objects that are still untold, maneuvering over civilian and military facilities across not only the United States, but also aerodromes, military and civilian aerodromes in Europe. I've been talking to people as recently as earlier this week in Netherlands, where frankly there are objects that are still being seen by military personnel that cannot be engaged or shot down with the world's best counter UAS technology. And there's just meek silence from much of the media who accept the lame explanation from the military that these are just Russian drones. I mean, the implications of that, if that's true, are extraordinary because not only does it mean that the Russians are actively and aggressively surveilling key strategic sites in Western Europe and
Of course they are. Why wouldn't they
the
be?
US with impunity, it means that we lack the ability to shoot those objects down because
And who's to say that the Russians are doing it on their own, like not Chinese helping for their own efforts, maybe. But yeah, I mean, if you think about a drone, it can stop on a dime, change direction in even like DJI Mini. It's like you could go really fast, stop, boosh, go up, down, and it just moves. Can you imagine trying to fire a missile like that? Well, just stop dead, come down, missile goes past. It'd be really difficult to shoot these things down.
those objects are so advanced. And yet, what's the noise coming from the rest of the legacy media? Crickets.
Absolutely, Ross. So we possibly could be in danger and we're out of money, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's something mysterious going on with the ongoing so-called drones mystery and the hypocrisy of much of the legacy media in giving the issue stick back in February 2023 compared with now, with an ongoing issue that I think is far more serious, is just quite extraordinary.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ross. That is the end of the questions.
Some good questions in there. Yeah, legacy media. I mean, watch the CNN. Nick Shirley came out, and if you don't know Nick Shirley is a 22, 23-year-old YouTuber who broke the Minnesota fraud scandal. Went out there, went to a bunch of different daycare centers, and realised that there was no children in them. And it's become massive. He's met with President Trump. He's briefed him on the fraud that's been highlighted. Continues to do that work. Good work, in my opinion. But you look at CNN, the way that they reacted to him. They were basically saying that he was a far-right supremacist, that he was only caring about the fact that it's only Somalians who was doing all this billion-dollar fraud of the taxpayers, and wanted to vilify him, try to basically call him out on the street, wouldn't do their own investigation. So 23-year-old YouTuber has basically shown him up that he's done more journalistic work than CNN. You know what I mean? And then they would want to attack him for it. So the legacy media, in my eyes, can all try not to swear. But anyway, let me know what you think. What is there? The Dugway Proving Ground, is that a place where they're doing biologics and, you know, NHI reversal? Area 51, I would have thought there were nothing going on there, considering that it's so popular and, you know, in mainstream media now, and obviously, you know, everyone in the UAP circles knows about Area 51. The underground base that Ross mentions, is that in continental United States or somewhere else? Maybe, who knows? Either way, interesting stuff. I will see you on the next one. You take care. Cheers.